The Anne of My Dreams by John van der Wolf. At school, our teacher told us about Anne Frank, the Jewish girl who lived in hiding during World War II. We read Anne Frank's diary. The story that she wrote was sad, scary, and beautiful, all at the same time. The day I finished the diary, I went to bed thinking about Anne. She died in a concentrated camp in Germany. Before falling asleep, I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could talk to Anne and hear the story from her? Anne, you were born in Germany, right? Yes, in Frankfurt in 1929, when I was 4 years old. Hitler became the dictator in Germany. He and his Nazi party hated the Jews. My family was Jewish, and they decided to move to Holland to be away from the Nazis. I don't remember anything about Frankfurt. I was too little. My family and I lived in Amsterdam, and I went to school there. Were you a happy child? Oh yes, I was always playing and joking. I had a lot of friends. I didn't always pay attention at school like Margaret, my older sister. Margaret was more serious than me. She was the good girl in the family. When did you realize that life was different for Jews? When I was 9, the Nazis destroyed hundreds of Jewish buildings in Germany. Synagogues, Jewish temples, stores, restaurants, and so on. There were broken windows everywhere. People called it Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. This happened in Germany, but everybody talked about it in Holland. What if there were Nazis in Holland? Would we be safe? We asked ourselves. When did the war start? Germany invaded Poland in 1939. England and France declared war on Germany. That was how World War II began. In 1940, the Germans invaded Holland. Was life difficult for Jews in Holland? Margaret and I were children, so we didn't know everything immediately. In 1941, we had to leave our school to go to a Jewish school. Then Jews had to register themselves so that Nazis knew where they lived. Next, Jews were not allowed to take the bus anymore, or go to the parks, or go to the swimming pools. I didn't understand why the Nazis hated us. In 1942, the Nazis made a new law. Jews had to wear a yellow star, the Star of David, which the word Jew on it, Jew in Dutch. It felt terrible to be separated from our friends. Is that when you started writing your famous diary? Yes, I got the diary as my 13th birthday present. I called the diary Kitty. Imagine that, she was my best friend. I told Kitty all my secrets. Around that time, my parents started taking furniture from the house. Were they preparing to go into hiding? Of course, they took the furniture to the building where my father's company was. There was a hidden section in the back of the building. They called it the annex. A few weeks after my birthday, my sister Margaret received a letter. She was 16 and she had to present herself at the police station. My parents didn't want Margaret to go there because the Nazis could send her to a concentration camp. We knew that people never returned from those camps, so my parents decided to go into hiding. Did you have time to pack? No. It was crazy. Couldn't take suitcases or big bags because that was suspicious. We put on many clothes, a dress, a shirt, pants, 2 blouses, and a coat, and we filled a small bag with some other clothes. And of course, I took my diary. We got to my father's office building. There, we climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, and my father's co-worker, Miep, opened the secret door. It was behind a bookcase. What was life like in the annex? There was a small apartment in the annex during the day. People worked in the office. They didn't know that we lived in the building, so we had to be quiet. We spoke in soft voices. We couldn't even flush the toilet during the day. How many people lived in the annex? At first, it was just my parents, Margaret, and I. After a week, Mr. and Mrs. Van Peels moved in with their son Peter. I didn't really like Peter, he was shy and boring. 4 months later, another man arrived, Mr. Freaks Peflix. Now there were 8 of us in a tiny apartment. I had to share my room with boring Mr. Peflix. What did you do during the day? Margaret and I had school. My parents taught us math and French. I really didn't pay much attention. I kept thinking about going back to a real school again. I tried to be happy when I was with the others. When I was by myself, I was serious and sad. I poured my heart out to Kitty, my imaginary friend in the diary. I suppose you read the diary. Of course, it's amazing you describe the events and express your feelings so well. Thanks. When I was 12, I wanted to be an actress and go to Hollywood. By the time I was 14, I decided to be a writer. I also read a lot. Our friend Miep went to the public library every Saturday and we shared the books. At night, we listened to the radio, and in the daytime, we studied and read. On Saturdays and Sundays, Mel came to visit us and tell us about life outside the annex. Miep and a few others from the office helped us with food. But sometimes there wasn't enough. The annex only had one small window and we weren't allowed to go close to it because people could see us. We lived in terrible isolation, and I couldn't dance or sing or run. I felt like a bird in a cage. I was desperate, but we were grateful that we were safe. If you feel so alone, why didn't you become friends with Peter? You know that. You've read my diary. Yes, but I'd like to hear the story from you. Okay, the thing is that there were 5 adults and 3 children in the annex. The person that was my best friend was my father, Otto. He was always supportive, patient, and kind. My sister was older than me, and she was more mature. Peter was 14, and he understood me better than Margaret. Peter and I never sat near the window and looked at the big tree outside. We could only see the top of the tree. We spent a lot of time talking about life outside the annex. Little by little, I sort of fell in love with him. Well, I liked him before, after all. I was a 13-year-old girl. Did you continue writing your diary? Yes, all the time. In the beginning, I wrote about myself, but later I started writing short stories too. Writing was my escape. In my diary, I was free to explore different worlds. And then somebody betrayed you, right? Yes, it happened in August 1944 after 2 years in the annex. The Nazis got a tip from somebody we don't know from whom. They came to my father's office building and said, "We know there are Jews hiding in this building, take us to them." So Victor Kugli, who worked there, had to show them the entrance to the annex. They took all 8 of us to jail, and they also took 2 people from the office, Mr. Kugler and Mr. Clayman. Where did they take you? They sent us to Camp Westerbrook in the north of Holland. They gave us blue overalls. The overalls had red marks. The red meant we were criminals because we went into hiding. They cut our hair and took away our dignity. Then the Nazis separated the man from the woman, and we could only see our father for a little while at night. Did you have any hope? Americans, British, and Canadian troops were in France on D-Day, June 6, 1944. At the camp, we told each other that the Allied forces were going to end the war and free Holland soon. However, we knew the Nazis might kill many people before that. Then they put 1,000 Jews on a train. We had to stand up as there were no places to sit. There were no bathrooms, so you can imagine the smell. Van Peel's family and Miss Trifili were also on the train. They took us to Akwitsky in Poland. When we arrived, we saw black smoke and we smelled burnt meat. They killed people with gas and burned dead bodies. It was a death camp. We were desperate. We had to work from early in the morning till late at night. They wanted us to suffer more. They separated men and women. I never saw my father or Peter again. Later, they put Margaret and me on another train, and we had to say goodbye to our mother. They took my sister and me to another concentration camp in Bergen-Belsen in Germany. There, my sister got sick of typhoid fever and she died. I was weak and got sick. I died too. I'm so sorry. It was a terrible, useless death. A month later, the Allied forces liberated the concentration camp, but it was too late for many of us. How many Jews died during World War II? Around 5 or 6 million Jews. Imagine, 5 or 6 million men, women, children were killed, all useless deaths. Did any of your family survive? Yes, my father. He didn't know whether Margaret and I were alive, so he looked everywhere. Then he spoke to a girl that knew us in Dresden, and she told him that we were dead. My father's colleague, Melps, found my diary in the annex, and she gave it to my dad. He decided to publish it in 1947. Many people have read it. Yes, it was translated into more than 50 languages. My story made people understand that war is useless. And how can you tell me these things if you are dead? You are dreaming, remember? I'm the voice in your dreams. Okay, please continue. War is useless, I said. I cannot believe that people still start wars all the time. For example, in the 21st century, there has been wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Sudan, and many other regions. Humanity needs to learn from the mistakes that we made in the past. Here are some quotes from Anne's diary. Despite everything, I believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build my hopes on a foundation of confusion, misery, and death. I think peace and tranquility will return again. No one has ever become poor by giving. We all live with the objective of being happy. Our lives are all different and yet the same. Who would ever think that so much went on in the soul of a young girl? How true Daddy's words were when he said all children must look after their own upbringing. Parents can only give good advice or put them on the right path, but the fundamental forming of a person's character lies in their own hands. Laziness may appear attractive, but work gives satisfaction. Think of all the beauty still left around you and be happy. Whoever is happy will make others happy too.